What's up, guys? Welcome back. In this video, we are going to answer two of the most important questions of this channel. The first one being, am I ever going to run out of polo shirts to record these videos? Probably not. Now, the second question is going to be, how do I grow my back? Now, I think that back is one of the most important muscle groups for aesthetics. I think that a man will always look better with a wider, thicker back, regardless of his training experience. So keeping that in mind, at least for me, it is very important that you make back a priority and that you try to maximize the back gains via your program. So I don't believe that making a back training program is very difficult. As long as you have two brain cells to put information together, you should be able to do so. But trying to find someone with two brain cells in the fitness industry is kind of like impossible. So to facilitate this to you, I'm going to give you some advice. I'm also going to explain how I came to the conclusions that I came to. And I'm going to give you some practical advice you can do. You can try on the most popular splits, which is going to be upper, lower, and full body. I think that these two splits are the most optimal for back development, especially upper, lower. Now, with that in mind, we can start. So before we can start with the advice in itself, we have to basically say what the back is. I like to divide the back into three sectors, which is going to be the yoke area, composed by the teres muscles, the traps, and the rhomboids, the erectors, and the lats. The yoke, you're going to mainly target it via wide grip stuff, be it pull-ups or rows in general, be it chest supported or unsupported. Also, you're going to target mainly the traps via weighted stretching, so that can be via trap bias pulls like snatch grip pulls, rack pulls, trap bar, high handle trap bar deadlifts, and stuff like that. Or you can also target it via deadlifts in a less efficient fashion, with just, again, deadlifts, sumo deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, and stuff like that. Then the erectors, you're going to target them via your pulls, so your deadlifts, and also your hinges like good mornings. Then you can also target them via unsupported rows, so your barbell rows and your T-bar rows. Then the lats, you're going to be able to target them via pullovers, vertical, diagonal, horizontal pulls. And for the horizontal pulls, you're going to mainly do it via a narrow grip with a supinated or neutral grip. Keeping that in mind, we can see that there's a lot of overlap, so therefore we can conclude that trying to hit every single muscle of the back by itself is stupid, because again, there is a ton of overlap. But what I'm also going to say is that trying to be minimalist and try to hit the back all at once is also stupid, because not only are you going to end up with deficiencies in your physique, you're also going to realize that you're not going to be able to do as much work as you could if you did basically proper programming. I did a poll a while back in my Instagram at Protein Man Supremacy, and what I found is that the people that did the lowest volume for the back did the highest amount of unsupported rows. So the lower back, turns out, it is a limiting factor. In fact, the people that did a lot of chest supported and calisthenics had the highest back volume. So we can establish a pretty good correlation that the higher your proportion of unsupported stuff for the back, the lower your volume. So keeping that in mind, we can establish that you need both supported and unsupported work. You need some capacity of unsupported movements so you can target the erectors properly, but also you need to do your fair share of supported work, and also calisthenics like pull-ups, inverted rows, cable rows as well, which technically are not chest supported, but they really don't target the erectors that much. And all of those movements are going to allow you to push the back volume up, and then you're going to realize that the back is way more resilient than you thought. So with that in mind, taking into account the huge amount of work the back can take if you do it properly, we can say that because there are so many muscle groups in the back and because it needs so much work, trying to do too many movements in 1 or 2 sessions is not a good idea. You're going to end up fatigued, not getting a lot of high quality volume, and you're going to end up wasting your time. So with that thought process, we can rule out back days and pull days, because you're going from a push-pull leg split, unless you do your deadlifts on pull days, which I don't recommend because then you train legs. I would recommend having your deadlifts on the leg day, but that aside, if you have just your pull days or your back days twice a week, it's going to be very hard for you to get actual high quality volume. So the best approach for me is going to be try to spread the work among the different training sessions. For this, I recommend having an upper lower or full body split, which I'm going to give now some practical advice on how to approach it. For the upper lower split, we're going to start with the upper body sessions. This is fairly simple. Here you want to do your movements that are easy to superset. So you have bench, you superset it with chest support rows. You have your vertical pressing, which you superset with your vertical pulling. That way, there's synergy because you're doing basically the opposite movement pattern, which leads to better health for the joints as well and prevents imbalances. But at the same time, because they're so low stress movements with a high stimulus to fatigue ratio, you're going to be able to really push them to failure and go full on sadistic on them. And it's going to allow you to accumulate a lot of high amounts of effective reps. And then on your lower body days, there you do your lower back work, because there you're not going to have to worry about interference. If you, let's say you did your lower back work on the upper body sessions, then the next day you do your leg work, it's going to be impacted by the previous session. But if you just move the lower back taxing stuff onto the lower days after your leg movements, or to replace even the leg movements, as I like to do, you're going to find out that you're able to accumulate, first of all, way more back volume, but at the same time, it's also going to diminish the amount of interference there's going to be in your program. So the way I like to approach it is you either open up with a trap biased pull, so either a snatch grip pull or some type of shrug, like heavy shrug with cheated shrugs, high handle trap bar deadlifts, rack pulls, stuff like that can really work well to open up a workout with heavy amounts of weight. And then you move on to your deadlifts and to your squats. Or you can start with your deadlifts or your squats and then move on to barbell or T-bar rows, so unsupported rowing variations. I think that this is the best choice. You can alternate between the two. You can have your lower one start with a heavy trap bias movement, and then you have your second lower day start with a leg movement, and then you follow that up with a barbell row or something of that kind. So that's how you would approach an upper lower. Then for full body, you want to either start with a trap bias pull or accompany your pressing with some kind of unsupported row. If you start with a trap bias pull, then your following back work is going to be supported or vertical. So you either, let's say you start with, I don't know, a rack pull, right? And then further into the session, when you want to work your back again, you can do it via chest supported rows or your pull-ups. Then, or a lat pull down, your pull-ups, fuck lat pull downs. Or if you want to accompany your pressing with unsupported rowing, then you should start your session with your leg movements. So that can be your squat or a deadlift, not both, of course. Then we need to talk about basically the lats to yoke ratio. So this is basically for aesthetics. If you want more of thickness, right? If you want to bring out the thickness of your back, you have to focus more on the yoke. If you want to focus more on the width, you have to focus more on the lats, or if you want a balance of both. So this ratio depends. The area you want to favor should be a 2-to-1, right? Or if you want balance, again, you can have a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, of this ratio, I'm going to say that 3 to 5 sets should be unsupported, and the rest should be supported or vertical. So for your yoke, right, you're going to have 3 to 5 sets of unsupported rows, be it barbell rows, T-bar rows, cheated T-bar rows, something along those lines. And then you're going to fill in the rest with chest supported rows. So let's say you have, like, I don't know, you do 5 sets of lats and then you do your 10 sets of yoke. Well, 5 sets or 3 to 5 sets of those should be unsupported. Then the rest should be cable rows, inverted rows, Helms rows, stuff like that. And then you have your other additional 5 sets of pull-ups. that's going to allow you to still have a very developed, complete back, but still have that little emphasis on the yoke area. And this limit on how much unsupported work you do is also going to allow you to accumulate way more volume than you could otherwise. Now, going into specific examples on application, right? Going to application of the advice I have just given, we're going to start with the upper lower. Basically, for the upper, you want to superset the pulling with the pushing, nothing too crazy, and you want to go balls to the wall. So you could start with a bench press, superset it with cable rows, and then you do your overhead press with your body weight pull-ups, wide grip pull-ups. It can be also chin-ups, something along those lines. Then for your lower days, you either start with a heavy trap bias pull, right, and then you do two leg movements, one for the quads, other for the hamstrings. The second leg movement, depending on which one you chose first, is going to be a less stressful variation. So let's just say you choose quads for the first one. You do your trap bias pull, then you do your squats, then you do your one-legged Romanian deadlifts, or you do your hyperextensions. Then, if you were to start with the hamstrings and you do your heavy trap bias pull, and then you do, I don't know, your trap bar deadlifts, then you follow that up with a low handle, then you follow that up with hack squats or with Bulgarian split squats. Then you continue with isolation. Or alternatively, you can start with a heavy leg movement, be it a squat or a deadlift in the 4 to 8 rep range, or 4 to 6 even, and then you follow that up with an unsupported row. Then you follow the unsupported row with another leg movement that is going to be less stressful. So if you started off with a deadlift, you follow the second leg movement with a hack squat, something along those lines. And then, of course, you move to isolation. Then for your arms day, in the case you have upper lower arms, you want to superset pullovers or narrow grip pulls, right, with triceps or biceps or forearms. Usually that's the way you should approach it. So you can have, for example, your cable extensions and your hammer curls, and then you go and do your pullovers. Technically, pullovers work your long head, but as long as you give enough rest time in between the extensions and the pullovers, it should be fine. There's not a lot of overlap. And if you feel that it's going to interfere, just do forearms and pullovers. On the contrary, you can do your triceps and you can do your close grip rows, for example, to target the lats. And then do separately the biceps and the pullovers. You could do something like that. Now we move on to the full body. So with the full body, you either start with a heavy pull-up and you superset that with pressing, then you have your leg movement, and then after the leg movement, you have your unsupported or supported row of some kind as a finisher. So an example of this would be starting off with pull-ups in the, I don't know, let's just say 5 to 8 rep range, and superset that with some type of ring push-ups. Then you follow that up with a leg movement, superset it with something like neck, and then you follow that up with deficit T-bar rows or cable rows or inverted rows as a finisher. And then you move on to isolation. Another option is to start with a heavy unsupported row that can be like Herzoviak rows, basically T-bar rows with a shit ton of weight in which you swing the weight up and then you let it stretch. Or it can be also a trap bias pull. So you can start with a snatch grip pull, you can start with a rack pull, you can start with shrugs, you can start with a high handle trap bar deadlift. Then you move on to pressing plus vertical pulling or chest supported row. So you already did your yoke and erector work. Now you follow that up with pressing volume and supported and vertical pressing work. And then you do your low axial loading variation for legs, which can be Bulgarian split squats, lunges, leg press, something like that. And then you move on to your isolation. And as the last option, you can start with legs, so a squat or a deadlift. Then you follow that up with a press and a chest supported row supersetted together. And again, you finish off with an unsupported row finisher and then isolation. So those are the ways you should approach back training. Those are some ideas I can give you. But basically, if you were to take something of this video, it is going to be mainly target the back both in an unsupported and supported variation. use the unsupported to target directors, and then use the remainder of the volume, there we go, with supported variations to accumulate as much volume as possible. Again, the back can take a lot of work. Do it high frequency, high intensity, high volume, and I swear it's going to work wonders. Now, of course, the amount of volume, I can't give you an exact amount of volume you should do because it is very individual. But in general, you're going to see that it is like a 10% or a 5% increase compared to the rest of your muscle groups. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave me your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.